Hey everybody, welcome to Last Week in Cannabis, episode number 6, I think, or 5, something. Anyways, it's 7:10. It's oil day, so that's a good reason.
Oh yeah.
Welcome to Last Week in Cannabis, the show about news, events, politics, legal decisions, important announcements around the cannabis world. We try to cover, most of the relevant stuff. Sorry for being a little late this week. House hunting in the Bay Area, and it's fun, but traffic sometimes is shitty. So, um, anyways, how y'all doing today? We got Fish Ganj guy with us.
Yep, yep.
We got Marty,
What's up?
and we got Roger, who's I guess in the middle of something, but he'll be back. Um, what's Marty? Do you want to start us off with the new Oregon changes since you weren't able to talk about that on Thursday?
Sure. Yeah, I can do that. You reminded me that it was oil day though. I had to bust out my oil here, so
Oh
get
yeah,
that.
I got some really nice 173 micron bubble hash rosin
Nice.
dabbing
I
in.
got I got some flour loaded up in the wand, and then I have some nice oil here that I'll put in the top of the Buddha. Get a good mix going. Get that going in a second. But yeah. So anyway, the I guess it was, I think last week is what it was, that they recently amended the colossal fuck up that they made in the previous legislation that they put out, which, again, severely limits the ability of medical growers to grow, I guess, basically. So the most recent one was actually sort of a step back in the right direction, even though the one before it was sort of like the cliche, sort of 3 step backwards, 1 step forward in this case. But so the probably the most recent fuck ups I would say are that they tried to address were that the separation of medical and recreational dispensary registration sort of led to this overrun of dispensaries that just went recreational because it was cheaper and they had bigger limits, and there really wasn't a limitation on what kind of products they could offer. They could offer edibles and concentrates, whereas before you couldn't do that in the rec market, and everybody wanted to. So then they changed the legislation to allow for it. But I guess sort of one of the unforeseen circumstances of that was that no dispensary wanted to pay the extra money to become a medical dispensary. And that causes issues for medical growers who can't sell to recreational dispensaries. So when all of their, they had a number of different like grandfather in periods of time in which they could sell that when those expired, there was nothing left for medical growers to be able to sell to, except for medical dispensaries who were overrun. You had this big imbalance of, okay, well, you have a whole bunch of recreational dispensaries without a ton of product, and you have a few medical dispensaries with too much product, and it sort of just caused issues for everybody involved, and probably more so patients than anybody else. We're still dealing with the amount of displaced growers that and patients of those growers from that legislation that changed cannabis to a farm use, and it displaced so many people that it caused sort of these same unforeseen circumstances that it just sort of fucked medical over. On top of, I think, some people in the recreational market actively trying to fuck over the medical market. So how they tried to address that in the most recent one they passed last week was allowing medical growers to sell 20 pounds a year to a recreational dispensary, or dispensaries. It's not like you can sell 20 to each one. Each individual grow can sell 20 total. So that gives you 20 pounds that you can sell, and supposedly to be able to turn over and profit to fund what they consider a compassionate grow, which for some reason, if you're compassionate, that now means you can't, make any sort of money, which I think is ridiculous that, you know, those two things even get put in the same sentence, because, you know, I feel like you should be able to grow quality medicine for people, turn a profit, pay your bills, and live a normal life without, you know, like, you shouldn't have to put your own balls on the chopping block just to create quality medicine. And I do feel like that's sort of what the state is asking people to do, and at the same time glorifying rec, like it's the greatest thing ever. Like, it's better to put thousands of plants in the field and have care for them, and, you know, do whatever and offer less quality product. And, you know, so I just think that the whole morality aspect of that is backwards. But they do allow for now 20 pounds to be sold into the recreational market, and that's sort of how they tried to band-aid that situation, because before then, medical growers had no access to it, and it was medical dispensaries were shrinking, and it was just becoming an issue for them to be able to do it. So this was part of that solution.
Is that a statewide amendment, or is that just county specific?
Statewide. So this is, I forget what the number is on it. You should be able to check. It's like 5190 or something like that. You know, they have like numbers attached to them. And I forget which one it is, but it just passed. The amendment just passed last week, and the original legislation was, I think, about a month ago. So maybe Steve, he likes to look that stuff up. Maybe he'll pull it up. But
for the Oregon bill?
Yeah. I think it's like 5190 or 5180, or who knows, I could be completely wrong. But as far as the allowing the 20 pounds, that just went through, and I suppose that's okay, but it's still, to me, not anywhere close to fair or what it should be. Or, you know, again, it's just sort of a band-aid on top of something that, you know, probably needs stitches and who knows what else. So they did band-aid that problem. The next thing they did was they tried to fix the fuck up that they didn't, at least they say they didn't mean to have, but it essentially made almost every nursery illegal, because it limited the amount of clones that you could have by the way they redefined an immature cannabis plant previously. Because for a long time, you know, they had it pretty well set that if your plant was above 12 inches tall, it was considered a plant no matter what. And then they changed that, and now it was pretty much you could have as many plants that you wanted to in veg as long as they weren't in flower. And we had that for a limited amount of time, and that became an issue. For whatever reason, they felt like they needed to limit it. But for a lot of people, I think, and a lot of people believe that it's because it became an income source for small growers. Because now, okay, well, if I can't sell, you know, as much product into a dispensary as I could before, at least now I can turn over clones and be able to have another income stream to help be able to just fund the farm. So obviously now that gets cut off as well, and they don't want to be able to do that. So for a short amount of time, any plant, whether it was a clone or whatever, was considered against your plant count for non-vegging or for non-flowering plants. So they wanted to separate plant counts for non-flowering and flowering plants, but either because of their own ignorance or because, you know, willful ignorance, whichever one you want, you know, they made it so that you couldn't have clones, and everything. Any plant that wasn't flowering was just a plant that wasn't flowering, including a clone. So now, again, this last week, they went back and fixed that, and they said, again, you can go back and have, it's above 24 inches, goes against your non-flowering plant count. Below 24 inches doesn't count against your non-flowering plant count. So you still have separate plant counts for flowering and not flowering. But if it's not above 24 inches, you can have as many as you want to. So if you want cuts or clones or whatever, obviously a lot of people do that just in their own breeding practices. They want to take, you know, if you need, you know, 50 total plants, they take 200 cuts and then pick the 50 best ones, right? It's just something that you do in genetic breeding practices. And on top of that, you can create other income streams like we talked about and fund smaller grows. So so they did fix that. That was another thing that they put into, and I feel like that's at least a more realistic compromise than what they did with the whole 20 pounds stuff. I didn't really felt like that wasn't, if you wanted to really put a limit on it, I think it should have at least been double. I think 40 pounds is probably more like, a realistic amount to be able to throw at that. But I suppose it's neither here nor there. I don't think it should be limited at all. So I kind of hesitate to speak too much on it. But so those are kind of like the big changes that they made. Everything else is sort of like, one of them is they can't require you to have a security system. They did reinforce different counties' ability to regulate farm use cannabis. So the same zoning stuff that they're using to, screw over growers here in Jackson County, like they did myself and, probably another at least 1,500 growers, basically got legislated in as standards. So any other county that wants to do it can just now do the same thing. So Josephine County is probably the next one that will come out and outright ban recreational cannabis on rural residential land. So anything that's not farm use, or they have like 5 different forestry zones. So you have like wilderness resource and I think timber resource, open space reserve. You can look up the zoning and see, but basically any of the farm or forest use lands will be the only ones that you can have recreational grows on. So even if your rural residential property is 200 acres, it doesn't matter. So all of these, even though they're supposed to be just fixing stuff in this one, they're still taking stuff back. It's still just, again, cementing in the stuff that we feel like is unconstitutional now is just going to get spread to other counties even more so, I feel like. And so if you're in Josephine County, I highly recommend that you go to your next city council county council meeting, because they're going to present, I know for a fact that they're going to present an ordinance to ban all recreational grows on rural residential land. And that's a lot. That's like the majority of the county. And a lot of it is large pieces of property. It's not like small pieces of property, in town, or it's not even industrial. It's not even like, you could be 50 miles outside of town, and just because it has a house on it, it's considered a residential property. So they make it rural residential. And some of this zoning was decided on like 20 years ago, when it didn't have an implication at all. Basically, if you're not going to farm like cows or trees or whatever, they were zoning it for the purpose that the person wanted to use it for. So if they were like, oh, I just want to build a house out here and have a nice little setup, then that's what it would get zoned for. So some of these now are really just made, and in my opinion, again, are just made to give people a way to enforce on their neighbors their beliefs. Like if I don't like cannabis growing, I now have a mechanism to make sure my neighbor doesn't do that. And nobody else does. If I don't like people growing tomatoes, I don't have a way to do that. If I don't like people raising cows because they smell like cows and that's disgusting, I don't have a way to prevent that. I don't have a way to go to the county and be like, hey, my neighbor does that. But that's exactly what happened to me. My neighbor, just because he doesn't like what I do, in his own opinion, he can come over and dictate what I do on my property. And that, to me, and even to him, we talked about this before on the Growing with Fishes, if it was anything else, they would never want the government to dictate what I did with my property. He hates the fact that he can't build on the back part of his property because it's too close to the wetlands. He's complained to me about it. He hates me, and he's told me about it. So for a fact that it bothers him that the county tells him what he can build and what he can do and not do with his own property, but yet he will, without blinking an eye, file a complaint with the county to shut me down. And that's the kind of like lack of principles that I feel like is just like so highlighted by all of this stuff. Whether you go to a county council meeting and you see the like countless number of growers in there that are concerned about their livelihood and just get totally, washed to the wayside by the 2 or 3
handful of fucking assholes.
Yeah, people on the panel. That's what it matters. Though 9 people end up deciding what happens for thousands of people. 9 people decided that I had to move. That's essentially what happened for me here in the real world. Like I would have wanted to move. I spent probably close to $20,000 improving stuff in my backyard, laying down gravel, bringing in soil, putting stuff down, building beds, putting in greenhouses. Like all of that stuff is all, was all investment that was made. And now they've decided that I can't use it for anything but growing food. Or
and not even
I could
just
raise
the monetary stuff you put into your house, but the memories you've made in that house.
Right. Like now, I mean, to be fair, I'm growing out of this house because I just had another kid and I have kids already. So, we probably would have had to move at some point, but the fact that we have to do it now, and my youngest kid won't even know this place. It won't even share those memories with my other kids. It will have zero because, we'll be gone by the time she starts making any memories. So there is definitely, and just feeling like you're being forced out is never a good feeling for anybody, whether you're being forced out because you're being foreclosed on, or, the market fell out on you, or you lost your job, or whatever it is. You never feel like you want to be forced out, but to have somebody do it based on something that is their own personal opinion, to me, is really fucked. Like, it's just a tough pill to swallow, to feel like I've paid the mortgage here for a fucking decade, and I spent all of this money, put all this stuff in, and got everything set up for it, and now you want to tell me I can't grow anything out there? Like, the original thing is, I think when I started doing all that stuff was about 5 years ago, and my plant count then I think was 72 was my limit, and then they cut it down to 48, and it was like, oh, I don't give a fuck, because that's, what's the big deal? That's just a small cut, right? Okay, well, they cut it down to 48. Okay, well, now it's down to 24. Oh, well, now it's down to 10, and now you can't even grow any outside. So that's been like the progression over 5 years, between what was a perfectly functioning environment for growers, patients, the OHA, like everybody was doing fine. And now all of a sudden you get recreational that comes in, or even just starts getting talked about. Once recreational was going to hit the ballot and people were pretty sure it was going to pass, that was when the council, the local councils, really started, like, next night, Steve, they really started to like push forward in that stuff, to start finding out ways to limit what people could do. And you already had the people that were complaining anyway. So, I think originally the council acted on the complaints that they got about cannabis grows and the smell of them. For a county that's literally millions, I think almost 2 million or 2 million people spread out in a big valley here in the Rogue Valley, and a number of different towns put together, you would think the number of complaints would have had to been pretty high for them to do something about it. But there was 26 total complaints for all of Southern Oregon.
And you know what? And there's nothing unreasonable about a smell ordinance where if someone if you're in a tight residential neighborhood, you know what I mean? Like, but I should also be able to complain about, similar type of bullshit. But I don't think, especially if you have an indoor grow, I think they should absolutely be able to put regulations on indoor grows, because you should be smart about venting your shit anyway. You know what I mean?
Well, they do have regulations already for like safety and all that different kinds of stuff.
Well, it's just like sound ordinance, it's the same kind of thing, and that's reasonable. But when they're regulating, like you're just saying, open fucking rural land that's maybe 60 acres or 100 acres. What fucking reason do they have saying that there's too residential to allow cannabis production? That's just bullshit.
Right. And so they, and even on top of that, well, I understand people in residential neighborhoods, and the point that they make all the time is that it will, if they can smell the weed from next door when the buyers come to buy my house, they're not going to buy it. So my property is worth less. And everything has been the exact opposite, especially if you have looked for property like I'm looking for property right now. You will know that property values, whether they're EFU or farmland or whatever they are, even rural residential where people can't grow, everything is going up. And not only is it going up, but it's going up fast. And and if you look at every state that's legalized, it's had the exact same trend. Real estate has followed and gone through the roof in everywhere that's legalized. And for the simple fact that people want to live where you can legally smoke weed. I mean, it's, whether they can grow it or not. Some people have medical needs, right? Maybe you live in Utah or, some bumfuck state where you can't do anything and you've got a kid that has seizures. If anybody's checked out like Viceland, they have a couple of shows about, the migrants, people staying at KOA campgrounds and different things like that because their kids literally just can't leave the state because it's the only place they can not have seizures. So obviously there's those people. And you also have people that bought houses so that they could live there and stay there and relocate there. So you have a wide variety of people that are flocking to states where it's been legalized for just the fact that people want to be there and be around it. And so the fact that they use it to argue the opposite, that it'll make their property values go down, to me is just more of these alternative facts that pop up all the time that just become like, just because you say them enough times, you think that it's true, and they get repeated everywhere. I hear them at council meetings, and I hear them in the rhetoric that people talk about. Just the other day, I have a kid, one of his best friends at school, his friend can't come over to my house because I grow cannabis here. His parents won't let him. His dad's a big military guy, and won't let him come over here. And so, to me, it's just more of that same sort of rhetoric, like somehow, like we have to protect the kids, or we have to, like, all these things that are totally unnecessary. Like we talked about the compost. Remember having to have a live feed of the compost to the OLCC being regulated. That's just so much of a waste to me. Like, that's, to me, just clearly shows again that somebody who doesn't have a clue what actually needs to be regulated is in charge of regulation.
And that's part of it. That's the biggest thing, is that none of these people doing regulation have done any commercial scale greenhouse cultivation. And, like, forget cannabis for a second. None of these people understand how a fucking greenhouse operation works. And then they want to come in and make all these psychotic rules, or they make them intentionally, like some of the organic stuff, intentionally overly complicated just for the sake of it, to limit the companies that have access to the market.
That's similar. Like what you're saying is, what happens is when a government agency gets built like this, it's just some cronies that work for the county to get the jobs. Because here, not the same thing exactly, but you could say kind of parallels it. When I moved out here 20 years ago on this land, and we started paying on the land, bought it from Amy's family, our sister. There was no code department. You could build a fucking house out here, and if it was built then, they couldn't say shit about it. A few years later, they developed a code company, and you'd call up and ask a code question. The girl would answer the phone. She would have to literally put you on hold and run back across the county building to the inspector, get a hold of him, get the question answered, and come back. So if you had 3 questions, she would literally run back and forth across the building with 3, like you'd see in a movie. It was so ludicrous. And then all of a sudden they were up our ass on every little thing. And to tell you, that same girl that had to answer the phone back then, she's a code enforcement inspector. She's not doing a good job after all these years, but that's how it was. The same as what you're going through there. The people don't know what they're doing when they first build these agencies, when it's new. When we had a new code enforcement, they didn't know what the hell they were doing. They had one inspector knew what he was doing, and everybody else were people that work for the county that got a job in the inspection office. Code enforcement. And that's what you're running across out there, like you said. No matter what, these people don't know what they're doing. And Steve made a great point too. As a commercial grower, I see the need for that in all types of in this. They just don't. Like you call up the universities and ask them stuff about what we do, and they don't have a clue. A major agriculture university, you call them, ask them a question about hydroponics, and they don't have a clue. I mean, so, I don't know if that's the same out west in the colleges there. Maybe y'all can address that, but sorry to go off on that, but it just seems like the same kind of parallel, that it's a new government agency, so they're going to screw it all up for a while.
But this is intentional, though. Look at what they did in Washington, where they deliberately sabotaged the medical market. I don't even think there is a medical market in Washington, which is completely fucked.
Yeah, I think it's the same. In my opinion, again, obviously, don't really have like any evidence to support it, but we've talked about it on the other podcast lots of times, which is that you had a stable market that existed. It had protections in place for patients, which would have been the same protections that should be in place for consumers of recreational. You had existing edibles regulations that already protected patients against the things that were necessary, not needlessly limiting the amount of medication they can have in their medication, which is fucking retarded. And that was I feel like one of the big things that, again, Colorado jumped on top of that not long afterwards. Now they're, also started limiting the amount that can be in edibles for, again, unfounded reasons. Like they're like, oh, we got to protect the kids. They might get a hold of a piece of chocolate. Like, okay, I understand that concern. But again, what would happen? Like, where's your concern with the kids
alcohol in your cabinet,
the electric blue, essentially death liquid for them? That I can actually see, since if you put a cup of it out there and my toddler drinks an entire cup of Bacardi 151, they could die, right? So, and it looks like water, right? So for the most part, I can see how a concerned parent would be extremely concerned that it was sitting out there in the open, uncontrolled, just sitting in a cup and not having anything happen to it. But let's say the same thing happens with a
tray of brownies. Say the kid eats a whole tray of brownies.
Yeah. So he
tray.
The whole, like, eats his weight and until he pukes. You know what I mean? Like any of the things that you want, like, you can't eat enough to kill himself. That's the point that we're trying to make here. And so I feel like none of the
I'll sleep for 3 days, but that's about it.
And I'm not condoning, like, please don't
do that. Yes.
If you think that I'm trying to convince you to give edibles to your kid, that's not at all what I'm trying to do. And if you think I am, remember my email is steve@photoponics.com. And you can email me and let me know all about it. But I really, that's not what I'm getting at. My point is that the fears are unfounded, and yet we regulate on unfounded fears, right? It's like if we allowed people that were afraid of spiders to regulate spiders, then we'd all have to kill them on site, right? I mean, everybody would have to immediately remove their shoe and smash a spider whenever you saw it. Like, that would kind of be like the same sort of irrational, knee-jerk type of regulation that you have in cannabis when you allow somebody who is ignorant and therefore afraid of cannabis. You end up with knee-jerk reactions in the same way that somebody who has arachnophobia would be afraid of spiders. I feel like the same thing happens over and over again. You see it in council members here who were voted in by, largely
church groups sometimes.
Church members, long-standing, in a lot of cases, elderly community members.
There's some cool churches too, but I've seen a lot of organized church groups putting people on city council specifically against weed in California and Oregon.
Right. I mean, they're local organized machines that, they're generally have a large population. Yeah. So they're great for indoctrination, right? I mean, that's basically what we're talking about. So they get those people on the councils, or those people are already on the councils for other reasons, like, they're already there in certain circumstances. The church props them up and keeps them there and uses them as necessary. So a lot of times they're already in place. You don't have to find somebody anti-cannabis because you have somebody that's already, you know, like silly putty. They can just mold them into whatever they want them to be. And so I feel like that happens a lot on, at least here in our councils, and whether or not they actually get things done usually seems irrelevant, except for in certain circumstances. And one of those circumstances is cannabis regulation. Everybody wants to see it get done. And most of the time, it's a whole lot of people saying that we don't want very much of it, and only a few people saying that we want a lot of it. And then somehow that gets misinterpreted into, oh, everybody wants to have cannabis regulation. Well, yeah, everybody wants to have cannabis regulation, but everybody wants a little bit. Does that make sense? You know what I mean? Like they distort it. Like everybody wants a little bit, but when you get to the council meeting, it's that everybody wants all of it. And that's not the case. Like, and that's the way they talk about it. Whenever you hear the council people themselves talk about it, they talk about it in the, oh, well, everybody knows that it should be regulated, in the same way that Steve just said too. Yeah, of course, people in residential neighborhoods, you know, need to have some sort of thing in place so that they can not be bombarded by a smell by their, you know, say in an apartment building, right? Everybody agrees that if you're growing weed in an apartment building, you should at least have a carbon filter set up on your exhaust. Like, let's say, just because we can all agree on that one piece of cannabis regulation doesn't mean we're all in favor of your entire list of cannabis regulations or how you're going to apply them. So they take a decision like, oh yeah, we all want cannabis regulation. And then how they interpret it is they go, okay, well, we all want cannabis regulation. Here is our list of cannabis regulations. Even though nobody ever voted on this big ass list, you know, at the meeting, only this much of it is discussed. And then we get a big ass list of what comes back, gets voted on and put into ordinance with very little discussion about it. So that's kind of the overview of how 9 people end up shaping a whole lot of legislation throughout an entire county.
And affecting patients, hurting people that are trying to treat them or themselves or their children or their family members. Like, this is just super destructive to people's lives.
Right.
Not to mention loss of income and.
Yeah, so like the patients that I grew for, you know, like people that I knew them and their illnesses, and you know, like one guy that I, you know, donate a lot of meds to, he has bone cancer. His arm's amputated because of it. So he's got one arm. I know his daughter, you know, so I mean, it just becomes a different situation. Like, okay, great, you want to call me a compassionate grower? Great, I appreciate that. I feel like a compassionate grower. But then you say, well, because you're a compassionate grower, you can only sell this much of it in order to maintain your compassionate grower status. And it's like, well, I don't, you know, that's where I start getting into sort of the dysfunction that I feel like happens here, is that why do we want to take somebody who wants to create high quality medicine and limit the amount that they can produce because somehow we think that because they're compassionate, they should make more money than a greedy rec grower? Like, why does that, you know, I don't understand why that computes. You already limit my plant count to 48, whereas if I went with rec licensing, you could get a lot more for basically similar price. If I have, in Oregon, if I have 6 patients, in order to max out, I have 48 maximum plants at 6 patients, and I end up paying a grower fee for each one of those that I have. And how we used to do it before recreational was the grower would pay for the card for the patient. So it was literally zero cost for the patient. Now, we can't do that anymore because it specifically says it's illegal. So they took that out. So now the patient has to pay that no matter what, and you know, maybe gets compensated or separately if the grower wants to, but it's technically illegal, which is legislation they changed a while ago. But it's just like one of the many bullet points that you can go through and have. And so now they increased our grower fees, and you start adding all that stuff up to where it's pretty close to the same cost as rec. And rec has a huge amount of plants that you can have. A tier 1 rec grow will only cost you a little bit more, and you can grow 5,000 square feet indoor with no plant count, just a canopy limitation. So 5,000 square feet of canopy indoors, in addition to a ½ acre of outdoor canopy and actual plants. So, and no plant count, you can have as many as you want to. You want 1,000 plants out there, have 1,000. You want 500, have 500. It's all about square footage. So it's so heavily weighted towards recreational grows that it's extremely frustrating. And that's how, once it becomes so weighted, you just see the medical market sliding off. It's so lopsided and moved to one side, it's just going to slide right off and not be there anymore. And how that's going to happen is in the same way it didn't make sense for dispensaries to register for the medical program. It's not going to make sense for patients to register for the program. It's not going to make sense for growers to register for the program. And it's going to push everybody into rec. And what that does, if you're, again, if you're the conspiracy theorist, is it shoves everybody through the same process. Now, anybody who was well established in the market now has to at least change a certain amount of gears in order to get new licensing or new facilities, or maybe you've tried to keep up with legislation for the past 2 to 3 years and change different things. Like, yeah, maybe now they don't require us to have a security system, but for the past 2 years, if you started up a recreational grow or were a medical patient or growing for a medical patient other than yourself, you were required to have one. So for the past 2 years, if you started up one, you already had to pay for it, which means now you've already shelled out the money and either have to make it back with your limited profit that you can have to the rec market, or what? You're just, like, okay, great, now you don't require it. But again, it's all to rig the system towards rec and towards new rec that's coming in. Anybody who is established gets uprooted. The stable market that existed for edibles, completely wiped out. The stable market that was set up and completely stocked for concentrates in the medical market, completely wiped out. The flower, CBD available flower, testing, all those things that were, every dispensary that existed in Oregon had options, had products, had all of those things stable and in stock. And now you have a wide discrepancy of where things are. So I feel like the only people that would want to drive that kind of imbalance in every single market is people coming in recreational. There's really nobody else, in my opinion. So it's either just like a giant clusterfuck and it's just like one car accident just keeps piling onto another, and then you've got 20 cars in a pile up, or you've got somebody deliberately trying to crash cars and block traffic. So maybe there's a tow truck guy out there that really needed some work. Or
I'd like to ask, because there's a comment I want to make, and then I want to ask a question I wanted to ask a while back about the council. The first comment I wanted to make was that the way I look at it, the reason they're doing it is somebody just mentioned, I think Steve said something, I'm not sure who said it, but they're just running it through the same thing. They've decided they don't want any more bureaucracy than they already have, and it'd be easier just to run it and funnel it all through one fucking thing, and that's what's happening, it sounds like. But the question I had back to the council is, all right.
It's just another secret way for them to pass prohibition. This is just their new fight. It's just their new angle.
They've decided they're going to do it that way, is what I'm saying. They've decided this.
Yeah, this is the same prohibition assholes that were trying to ban legalization in the first place. Now it's forced through, so now they're trying to find loopholes and ways to fucking make you suffer just because they're fucking assholes.
But the more important thing is getting back to the council. This is why I don't know if you. Well, you sound like you keep up on legal stuff and all, but what it is, what I really wanted to bring up, because you haven't talked about it, is that. Like you said, this council doesn't discuss any of these ordinances or anything, and then they approve them. Well, I'm not sure that'd be legal. To me, being from a legal family background somewhat, I don't find that would be. Have you really investigated and confirmed that what they are doing is actually legal by law?
Well, that's actually an interesting question, because when a lot of the original legislation that passed around the zoning, because that was really the big sort of the one that started everything. Like if it was the car crash, it was the first car crash that started the rest, right? It was the the semi truck that T-boned in the middle of the freeway, and everybody piled on after that. And when that happened, we had a number of different growers that sort of got together and funded a group called Right to Grow, and they took on a number of different, like an attorney out of Portland who's pro-cannabis and been pro-cannabis for a long time, put him on retainer, and actually sued the county. And it was found that the way that the council presented the ordinance and approved the ordinance and the ordinance itself were all deemed unconstitutional. So essentially, even though that the legislation was put forth to protect medical growers from legislation, so written into Measure 91, it specifically says that they don't want recreational to have any sort of say over the medical market. And the way that they introduced the legislation for, and this was specifically in Jackson County, the legislation for their land use ordinance changes was unconstitutional. And that was even ruled on locally here, except for that particular court was appealed and then overruled by the next judge above that. So it basically just comes down to the person that you ask and who makes the last ruling. And so even though Right to Grow did win and get, I guess technically win a case against the county that it was unconstitutional the way that they proceeded and the terms in which the land use was put in. So they were only supposed to be able to legislate against recreational grows. That was the whole sort of the foundation of their argument in their court case. And the original ruling supported that. After the appeal, it went back to the point where with the second ruling, they were able to basically not have to change anything. So the first ruling, they were going to have to change their land use ordinance, offer the grandfathering they originally promised, and made all those changes. And then instead of do all that, they filed an appeal, got another judge to overturn it, and then went back through. And now that same model has been used across all other counties, not all others, but a lot of other counties in Oregon. So like Klamath County, and there's even a list now where they just made it part of legislation. So there, it even has a technical term. There's an opt-out list in Oregon. If you Google it, you can find out the state puts out a list of everybody they just created a program for it. So now this entire thing that we're talking about, even though it was deemed unconstitutional, they're like, hey, let's just make a government program out of this unconstitutional ruling. That's where we're at. So even though we sued them and we funded it and all that stuff happened, we still felt like we just got screwed in the end. So, I mean, I guess the answer to your question is, yes, it was unconstitutional, and no, it wasn't correct, but I don't know what else to do about it in terms of that. And I'm not a lawyer, probably giving a poor explanation to it.
No, that was good. That was good. Thanks for the answer. But so, in my opinion, you're at the point where you advocates out there that can that have the right to vote, and the organizations like you said, Right to Grow. It's time for you to appeal the appeal and go back to fight at it again and get some more. That's the next step, because they appealed it. Of course, it's like anybody's going to appeal it, and of course they're not going to just follow it. They're going to appeal it, and that's just like if they arrested you and convict you, you're going to appeal it and go back home until your second trial or whatever.
Right, as long as you have funding, and I think that's what it comes down to, is that they know the longer they stall it out, which obviously Right to Grow is appealing that same thing in Jackson County, but they're going to run into the same situation where they're just siphoning money away from growers in order to fund that lawsuit, right? So You have small growers that are trying to defend their right to be able to grow that they've already lost, right? It's already been taken away. People have already invested money. People have already, had to adapt to the regulations they put in place first. And now we have to prove that they need to take those regulations out. And anybody in the meantime, unless you've got money to survive, is going to get squeezed out and have to do something different. So for them, like, even though it appears like and I feel like this is kind of like maybe a loophole in the way our local governments work, is that they have the ability to do that. They can sort of put these things in place, and then we have to prove to them that they need to take them out. And repercussions from those are never calculated. Like, there's nobody that's going to come back and even if we win the case, there's nobody going to come back and give us the money that we would have made had we been able to grow in my backyard last year.
Right.
Does that make sense?
No, yeah, that's very good. Because so it's basically, it comes down to they're relying on the lack of income and stability of the local growers to subside and dwindle as they keep pushing it back and pushing it back.
Sure. Just sort of think about it like in the old days when they would, and when you had wartime, they would hole up in a castle and have food stocks inside. You start taking out their ability to get to food and water outside, and eventually you're gonna, they're not gonna have any food or water inside. They're gonna run out of their stores, and the same thing happens for growers. A lot of people, had stuff stocked up and were able to sort of bleed it out, but they know that the longer that they bleed out, the more likely people are to just give up. And then in the end, you'll have less competition because you just bled them out of their supplies and resources and starved them out. So there's already been, literally hundreds of growers in the Rogue Valley, primarily small mom and pop shops that maybe grew for a cousin that had an illness, or friends, or whoever, basically small mom and pop shops that weren't out for big bucks are the ones that disappear. And we saw the same thing in this area in the timber industry when, people wanted to come in and stop clear cutting and do a bunch of stuff, which was all, which was great. Kind of that same thing. Like, everybody agreed we need to stop clear cutting, right? Like, that was all what we agreed on. And what regulations end up squeezing out was a whole lot of responsible loggers, and the people that made huge profits from clear cutting survived. So companies like Sierra Pacific, who like clear cut a large portion of Eastern Oregon and Northern California and different places like that, they sit on huge stockpiles of money and were able to lay off a bunch of workers and sell off a bunch of property. And now they're basically the only ones left in the area. And when you had companies like, Stone Forest Industries, and a lot of them that were a lot of small places that were loggers that would, did a lot of good, plant 6 trees for every one that you took out, and a lot of different things that even became environmental standards for later. And what we have now were created by people that couldn't stay in business after they got shut down by regulation. So it's really kind of a mirror situation to where you can squeeze out the people that you need to be bringing in. And if you create regulation that helps the big ones instead of the small ones, this happens over and over again. And so I feel like it definitely mirrors that whole sort of collapse of the timber industry in this area, and the grower collapse in this area, sort of feeling that same pinch of, not being able to keep up with the cost of regulation and environmental impact changes and all the different stuff that you have to do to be a grower now. Not only do you have to invest more money, but you have to invest more time, you have to do more reporting, you can have less plants. Like, there's so many things that are weighted against medical growth specifically that it's going to be tough for it to last very much longer than it already is. And then registration on patients is down, growers is down, like everything across the state is pretty much plummeting, which means it became underfunded. So now they moved it under the OLCC. So now instead of the OHA being primarily in charge of it, the OLCC is in charge of regulation. So it's just been like one thing after the other, like a domino effect from each one of those moving forward. And I feel like in the end, what really happened is just, you know, again, I guess on dominoes, once everything is said and done, all the dominoes are laying on the floor, and then you rebuild. And the best people, the people that come out on top in that situation are the ones that had no dominoes built to start with, because they can just level the playing field and come in and be at the same place that everybody else is. And unfortunately, for a lot of local growers here, and people that have less, you know, if I didn't have as many resources as I did, I wouldn't be able to sell my house and put a down payment on the other one and do other things. So, you know, if I feel like I'm fortunate in a way to be able to at least hopefully have a chance to get into this other spot. No, I don't like to get ahead of myself, but there's a lot of people that didn't. There's a lot of people that had nowhere close to enough to be able to continue to do it. And even for myself, I can continue to provide for my patients, which for me was like a personal loss that, you know, I don't even know, you know, it saddens me to have to hear them, you know, pay for stuff that they would have gotten for free. You know, when it's a cancer patient with one arm, you know, I feel like if you have an ounce of morals, you kind of feel bad about it. Like, I feel bad that I can't grow enough to share with him. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like a pussy because I won't just put some plants in my backyard and take a fine or whatever else that I have to do. And obviously that's not fair to myself, but I do process those feelings. Like, it just fucking sucks that I can't do that anymore. I really enjoyed, I selfishly gave to people because it felt good. I like giving pounds of medication to somebody and saying, here, you don't need to pay me anything. Go get yourself better. Like, just take this, go heal yourself. Tell me how great it was. I want to hear about it later. If it was shitty, let me know. We'll make it right. You know, whatever you need to happen. But you have that personal interaction with a patient. And I enjoy hearing those stories. I hear from patients in the past about how, you know, they go to their doctor's appointments and, you know, they get their scans back and it's smaller, or it's almost not even there, or they can't believe how much different it is, or all those different things is something that just disappears when you don't interact with them like that. And it's a good feeling to feel like you're feeding into it. And so that's why my frustration with that people feel like you shouldn't profit from that is I have a disconnect from that. Like, I feel like if you can profit and do that, that's a win-win, right? Like, why wouldn't you want the patient's happy? I'm happy. Like, why do people have an issue with that? And I feel like for some reason there's this idea that people that do good work shouldn't get paid good money. And when you can set up a situation like where people can agree that, you know, if you've got cancer, you should just have access to quality medication, because that's what I would want. If I got bone cancer tomorrow, I wouldn't want to have to be concerned with, you know, where I would get all my medication from, whether or not it was legal, all of those different things. So I guess that's kind of the, like, the amount of discomfort I have with this entire situation is sort of hard for me to quantify, because in addition to all of the financial burdens and hardships and different things that I've had to go through with that, to me, what I feel the most is just having that disconnect of just not being able to, like, I got to talk to the guy and, you know, I can give him, you know, a couple of buds or, you know, whatever. When I harvest my indoor, I can give him a decent amount, but for the most part, you know, like, I can't produce the same amount, which means I can't share the same amount, which in the end feels shitty in comparison to what I've shared in the past. So having that taken away from me by these 9 people that really have no idea or even get affected by any of that interaction, like whether or not I grow them this other person medication or not, really has no effect on them. And so it's hard. That's the hardest part for me to swallow, is that, like, I can't do any of that stuff for people that I know personally, just because A, my county council sucks, and B, my neighbor's an asshole. Because those are the two things it comes down to. I can still grow back there if nobody complained about it. It's all complaint driven, right?
Yeah, you got an asshole neighbor that you can risk it.
Right. So, and that's where the county comes back in too. They're like, hey, well, we're not doing anything unless somebody complains about it. That's kind of their other pushback too, which I suppose is okay, except for you do have some of those code enforcers that are just driving around looking for somebody, you know, somebody's grow to fuck with.
But they don't do that. The same here, like I mentioned earlier about our county. It's the same way. They don't come and bug you about your yard until somebody complains. You know, and they do a lot. They got other shit to do. They don't really want to put a hardship on you, but they have a job too. And if somebody else made the law, that they have to come out there and be the bad guy too. But I'll tell you why you're so upset. It's more about the fact that you've got deep-rooted personal relationships built with all these people you were doing caregiving for. And that's what I just heard it. That's what really hurts the most. Because you don't even hardly, do you still see them? I mean, or have you lost the relationship because you can't provide for them?
Well, some of them I still see, and some of them I don't. You know, because I had 6 of them altogether, and some of them only for a short time. But a couple of them I'd had for a while and worked with for a while, and most of the time, they're people that can't grow from themselves for a particular reason or another, or they would be, right? So there's always that element of it too. But again, the ones that I do see and the ones that I am still friends with, you know, friends on Facebook or talk to them or even just see them around occasionally. You know, I feel bad because I don't have stuff to give them. I feel like that's sort of been like the norm that I've been able to share with, and I know that they're in need. And when I do talk to them, I have to hear about how they don't have enough medication or they have to pay a lot more for what they have, and you know, so it's just not the same type of experience that I, you know, literally change those relationships that I had with people, and that's a hard thing to quantify, like what's lost or not or anything else.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Yep, exactly. Goodbye, Fish. See you later.
That was extremely well put. Yeah, Fish Ganja guy had to run. He'll be back. He's going to do one of his little evening events, so I won't even mention what it is to out him. don't want to out him.
Well, great. Now we all know, Steve. Thanks. No, I'm just kidding.
He does something in the evening.
That's right. He's secretly.
Alrighty.
He works for Chippendale.
Oh yes, he works at Chippendales. Email all of your Chippendale requests for Fish Ganja Guy to fishganjaguy@gmail.com.
I actually have to go eat some dinner too. I hate to rant and run.
So you just ranted and ran? You're not even gonna?
I have to. I'm starving, man. It's
well, go eat and come back because we didn't even touch the first article yet.
I was gonna say, yeah, we had an hour.
We're like 45 minutes in. We're like almost an hour in. We didn't even touch an article yet.
All right. Well, I got to get some food and then I'll be back. So.
All right.
You guys did it for a while. I've taken up too much time anyway, so I'll be back.
That's important. That's important.
No, yeah, that was a really, really good and really, really well put.
And maybe somebody will hear the show that wants to help out legally, you know, financially.
Yep. And a lot of people don't understand all these hardships. They don't understand all the shit that's going on. They just hear, oh, legalization, and they don't understand what's actually happening.
You know, or they think that, you know, like, oh, yeah, of course they should have a security system, or of course there should be a smell ordinance, you know. But then, you know, when it gets followed up with and it's, you know, yeah, maybe we should have, you know, some sort of regulation, but what type of regulation and who does it affect and how does it affect them are all, you know. And what are our priorities? Are our priorities to protect the rec market, or our priorities to protect, you know, patients that, you know, rely on this stuff to stay alive? So unfortunately, it, you know, either they didn't consider that and prioritize those things going into it, or they did and decided that their priorities were elsewhere. And I suppose depending on your level of cynicism, you can sort of decide what you think they considered and what they didn't. But I can tell you the repercussions of is a lot of what I'm trying to communicate, which is that, you know, even if people didn't mean to, for whatever reason, it definitely has become a hardship on medical growers and patients for a number of different reasons. And hopefully, you know, this last one step in the right direction needs just more momentum behind it. Like, we need more ideas behind how to not have things so weighted against medical versus recreational. And maybe it's the same solution we've always talked about, which is just straight flat legalization on the federal level, because that affects all of the court systems too. You can only appeal so far. So
register to vote. Everybody register to vote and vote the assholes that make it hard on the industry out of office.
Word. All right, I'm gonna go get some food. You guys talk.
Bye. Later. In trouble. I'm on my little screen, so I can't probably read anything. I'll go look at it. I see you gave me a link here. Is that open in a new place? If I click on that, Steve?
All right. Yep. So I thought it'd be cool since it's 710. For those of you who don't know, 710 is oil upside down. So, cheers to your dabs. Cheers. Anyways,
oh my.
So I thought it'd be fun to talk a little bit about like the history of dabs, and where they came from. So the very first something that resembled them was invented in the 1800s, but they weren't really widely produced until the 40s. Guess who it was, and guess which program it was part of?
Government. It was the government.
Yep. But which program? Dun da da da.
Yeah, I just knew it had to be the government. FBI.
So,
I don't know.
So the government called honey oil THC acetate serum. It was used as a truth serum during World War II. It was also used in MK Ultra, which I was not aware of. I thought this would be kind of cool thing to do a little history on it for the thing. There's an article that has a lot of this stuff. It's courtesy of Leafly. As always, I post all of the articles in the comments on the YouTube page. So if you're listening to the audio version of this, make sure that you go over there and do that. I will finish re-uploading all the episodes once I get moved here. I should be moving here at the end of the week or next week into my new place here out in the Bay. So, yeah, I'm not 100% sure on the day yet, but once that happens, I'll be able to get back to normal and finish re-uploading all those to the audio format. So I do apologize for not getting all those up to date as lately. So, anyways, I thought it was really cool I was totally unaware that they made THC acetate serum, which is like a alcohol extracted THC extract, basically, hash. So then, in the 1973, the very first version of like BHO, basically, was invented by, or at least was first published widely. Then, someone's phone's ringing. I think that's Rogers. Anyways, where were we? Oh, right. So then it started to become much more popular in the 90s. And then in 1999, there was kind of an online PDF called Hash Honey Oil Technique that was passed around quite heavily. And that kind of led to the increase in BHO during the 2000s, or the dissemination of the knowledge. And then in around 2009 to 2010, it finally became like a commercially produced product in places like California and Colorado and things like that. So, and this encompasses CO2 and BHO, and now you have rosin, which is my favorite. I think rosin made from bubble hash is, especially when you do it, fresh frozen, is just so good. But anyways, I thought it'd be kind of cool to touch on that, since a lot of people aren't aware of some of the creepy origins of extracts. So happy 710 for everybody. We also had a cool article. Fuck that article. The article's kind of dumb. All right, so the next article we have is from nnbw.com, which is basically they did a big study on cannabis producers, and they found that a lot of them aren't really producing. So the biggest producers are edibles, followed by concentrates, and then topicals. So edibles were, aside from flower, were manufactured 68% of the time, or is 68% of the product line of a lot of different places. And then concentrates made up about 63, and then topicals are 45. Only about 6% of the market produces cannabis specifically for topicals. Only about 24% produces exclusively for concentrates. And only about 22% produces exclusively for edibles in the latest market survey. And this is from Northern Nevada Business Weekly, and this is of Nevada growers. I thought that was a pretty cool a breakdown of the market, at least in Nevada. So. Next, we have an article from news24.com. And this is an African thing. So Zimbabwe is considering legalizing the production of cannabis for medical purposes to lure investors to the country. So the cabinet minister, along with the government, there's considering a bill and allowing some Canadian and other companies to come in and set up some business there. So it'd be kind of cool to see cannabis spread to Africa. I know there's a lot of different, a ton of different health benefits that they could provide that, Africa doesn't always have. Large parts of Africa don't have the best healthcare, so it definitely help provide for a lot of these medical shortfalls that some of these people have.
Oh yeah, that's been a real trouble over there in those parts. That's again goes back to what I'm always preaching about. Africa is another those other countries that the U.S. government forced them to have such harsh laws against cannabis and other drugs in order to, have their drug war, because really illegal before the U.S. forced them into it. Because we give billions of dollars to those countries, and we just say make a law or we won't give any money, and that's good. So it's good to see they're starting to go and do it their own way and not have to kowtow to what, nothing, not that I'm not a patriot, so to speak, but, kowtowing to the U.S. We shouldn't be telling every country in the world how to run their country.
No, sometimes they are wrong, though.
Well, but I mean, in Africa, as far as cannabis goes, they're not wrong. I mean, they were wrong because the U.S. forced them into prohibition.
So I wanted to bring this up. This next one's gonna be like a little bit of a rant. So, this one is brought to you by themercury.com.au. Tasmanian Alkaloids is going to become a medical producer after securing manufacturing license in Tasmania. The reason why this is complete fucking bullshit is because Tasmania makes 40% of the world's opiate crops. So the people that are responsible for many different people overdosing in the United States are going to now be producing lots of cannabis, So definitely make sure that if you're in Australia, avoid buying from these people. Hit them where it hurts. Hit them in the wallet.
That's interesting. As strict as Australia is, and in Tasmania right there, and they're well, that's pretty interesting. I didn't realize that there was you said opiates?
Yep, they grow 40% of the world's medical opiates.
Are they poppies?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Yep. I didn't realize that. I didn't know. I didn't know. That's a good one. Okay. That was good. I saw you had a couple of international stories tonight. That looked like a nice little flavor for the show tonight.
I thought it was cool about Zimbabwe, too. You don't hear about African nations legalizing often.
Any of those countries over there catching a break. I mean, they've been downtrodden, stomped on for decades, So I'm all for all countries to be free and do what they need to do. I think if all countries were free and could do what they wanted to do without input from other countries, so a lot of them might do the right thing and leave everybody else alone.
Yeah.
Not to mention any particular, get into any particular politics, but just a broad kind of statement about live and let live.
Yep. So, Colorado, the next article is the cannabis.co. Colorado spent millions of dollars in taxes to fix up different schools, some of them which are over 100 years old. They've been able to do full restorations on these, historic schools in Colorado. Towns like Deer Trail and things like that have been able to, hugely benefit from the increase in cannabis taxes.
It's always good to see that they're using taxes for the children's schools and stuff like that instead of just roads and other. I mean, we need roads, but the children, education needs to get better.
Yep.
We need the artistic programs and all that have been cut because of so much funding to schools being cut because of selfish pork barreling and all.
Yep.
We like. Not, this isn't the same thing, but they did the lottery here. It's called the education lottery. They finally passed it a few years ago, but it doesn't build schools. It just gives which is great. It gives scholarships to every kid that's got like a B average or a B plus average gets a scholarship to college for free. But it doesn't pay for any elementary schools to be built so the kids can learn young and get a foundation for learning correctly. They're bludgeons for the first 8 or 10 or 12 years. Unless they're just super talented or their parents can afford to send them to a school or buy a house in a school district where they do have education that's up to par with the new millennium. I mean, over here in the South, there's still a lot of 1965 published books in the schools.
The school, I went to a 2-room schoolhouse for part of my high school for reasons. And they had some books there from the turn of the century. I thought that was super fucking cool.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool, but now you still got to keep up with the time and the technology.
No, I get that.
Without the money, they can't get the books, And that's what
so the state of yeah, go ahead.
I was ranting a little bit. Well, I think it's sad because when I go somewhere and see everybody walking around, like I go to the grocery store somewhere and almost get bumped into by some stupid ass walking there, texting on their phone, walking down the aisle. Like I got to get out of their way and make sure I don't run over them because they're not paying attention to nothing. And like went to a Santana concert, one of my favorite musicians in the whole world last year. And they were selling you can't bring in anything. Soon as the lights went out, Santana started to play. I guarantee you 50% of the audience had their phones and iPads and all that shit up there, and all you saw was a bunch of little screens. It was like a light show in front of the stage and nothing but screens and screens. You know what? It's nice when you find a kid. We got a kid working for us at ILGM that's a moderator. When I hired him, I didn't know he was like 2 days shy of 21. Real popular guy, and he's a pretty good little grower for his age. And I talked to him, and I found a maturity in him, and the reason why, this kid is unusual in this day and age. He reads books, Steve. He reads books. And, when you bring up books, I get real passionate about that because I bequeathed him my compost book. Rebello wrote the Compost Bible. Well, I got a copy of that, and it's like a Merriam-Webster dictionary with super tiny print. It's like 2 inches thick, on compost. And he likes to read books. And I said, you know what, buddy, I'm going to send it to you one day. Anyway, all right, back to the show. Sorry, that was the end of my book.
So Colorado has averaged at least $40 million a year injected into what is called the BEST program, which is the Best School Constructions program. So the BEST program is just for reconstruction of dilapidated schools, schools that have structural issues, portions of the school that can't be used for safety reasons. They have a lot of new regulations involving handicap and less abled people.
Right.
So they definitely it helps bring all these places up to date and better equip it, especially for special needs students. And that's not even counting this. What is it? It's almost $1 billion they've made in school taxes since in 4 years in Colorado, or 3 years in Colorado. But since the beginning of medical, they made almost $1 billion or something like that. It's crazy.
Well, that was a good segue from my bitch, Brent. Right into how Colorado's going to rebuild dilapidated schools.
Right?
Yeah, wish they do that around here. Yeah.
So the next article comes from the Cannabis. In a couple of weeks, you'll be able to get well, you won't be able to, but if you're a native to, or if you're a Uruguayan citizen, you can get a cannabis for $1.30 a gram, no questions asked, for recreational or medical or whatever you want, from your local pharmacy. The thing is that there are no companies allowed to grow cannabis. It's all just the government. The government is the producer, and the government is the seller.
Well, as long as the government grows good weed, nobody be unhappy. Everybody be happy and taking a nice siesta every afternoon down there in Uruguay. That'll make everybody smile. That crime goes down too.
Yep.
I don't have a problem with the government being involved if they actually got involved and did it right, and not try to bullshit everybody and just make a profit over crap because they don't know what they're doing. I'm sure they could have. I mean, I'm sure they got people that would know what they're doing if they really wanted. But it seems like every time the government's involved in growing weed, it sucks.
Well, they don't. They also they don't allow edibles either in Uruguay, so which is kind of bizarre, to be honest with you.
Oh shit! Sorry, had a cat jump up on my lap and just.
But so in the Americas, you know, Canada is gonna have full legalization by July. States in the District of Columbia in the U.S. have legalized now. Mexico legalized medical marijuana in June, so that's freaking awesome. Jamaica, you can Jamaica, you can have 2 ounces on you now. Colombia lets you have medical marijuana and possession of cultivation limited amounts for personal use. Chile legalized or decriminalized and is medical, and you know they're going to have recreational soon. Peru decriminalized small personal amounts. Paraguay decriminalized small personal amounts. Brazil allows cannabis use for medical. Argentina passed a medical bill. Ecuador passed a medical bill. And Ecuador has decriminalized, personal use, and then Uruguay has full legalization, but you can't buy it if you're not from Uruguay. So
that's weird because most places let you buy it if you buy it there. You can't bring it in or take it out, but you can buy it there, like
right,
like Thailand.
Yep. So it's always funny. It's goofy fucking laws. This will all shake out eventually.
You can't buy it if you're not from there. That's interesting. So they don't want any tourist trade. They just want to make everybody happy and subdued in their own country.
Yep. The next article comes from. Go ahead.
It still is very interesting that basically the entire Central and South America are legalized in one way or the other, and the U.S. is still dragging the smartest country in the world is dragging their damn feet. Come on, guys. Come on, man.
So Maryland allowed the opening of the first dispensary in Maryland, but the first crop won't even be ready to harvest until Labor Day. So you can go visit a dispensary, you just can't do anything there. You can buy a T-shirt, I guess.
Isn't that cool?
Well, they did have their first one open, and just you can't do anything there.
That's interesting. Yeah. So the dispensary had to open in order to start growing for themselves. Is that what happened?
I don't know what kind of goofy.
Yeah, Maryland. Well, Maryland's right up the street from us, so I can just imagine.
Allegedly, the cannabis.co is the next article. UN office can't find a single cannabis drug overdose death, despite widely consumed worldwide. The UN's Drug Office and Crime released a 2017 World Drug Report and failed to list any drug deaths from cannabis. Out of estimated 238 million users worldwide. So, pretty funny.
We make that claim, and then there's another story. Which is a lot. That's nice to have a story because we talk about this a lot in the forums too. People. They say this or that, and or even I talk to people a lot, because I don't make a secret of what I do in my life. And I talk to a lot of people.
Who grows the most weed worldwide? What country? Do you guys know by weight, like in terms of volume harvested?
Probably us.
Nope. Try again. It's not even close. The U.S. is going to take a while to catch up because these guys grow mountainsides of it.
I don't know.
Whole
Because you can
mountains.
guess Jamaica. I don't know.
Morocco. No one grows more weed than Morocco.
Okay. Yeah, I couldn't think of anywhere over in the Middle East or somewhere, but okay, Morocco. Okay. Yeah,
Yep.
Nobody ever think you don't
North
think about
Africa.
Morocco unless somebody brings it up.
Nope. Well, you do if you're in Europe.
They're being real quiet because they're all
get that gold stamp, you know.
That's
Gold
pretty
stamp
interesting.
hash
A very small
from
country
Morocco.
too, isn't it?
Good shit.
Really small country.
Anyone that spent a lot of time in Europe or smoked a lot of hash in Europe knows what's up. Anyways, next article is the cannabis.co. Lawmakers negotiating Massachusetts laws are trying to hash something out here before the end of the fiscal year. They're still, disagreeing on tax rates and a couple of other things, but it looks like there is a pretty good chance that they'll be able to get something together.
Well, I know I've got a ton of people, ton of customers and members at the forum that are from Massachusetts. They're going nuts up there because they got legalized. They're going nuts. They're all. I think the whole state decided to grow. Funny.
No, not in terms of total weight. Florida gets sued over its ban on smoking medical marijuana. So we talked about this before when we talked about the medical bill passing and how it was fucking stupid, and the medical bill wouldn't. Why are you going to pass a medical bill if you can't smoke a joint? Like, that's just fucking ridiculous. So.
Oh shit! Sorry, buddy.
Muting Roger. Sorry about that, guys. If smoking was their intent, they should have declared it. So basically what happened, for those of you who aren't aware, Florida passed a medical marijuana bill that only allowed vaporizing and edibles and concentrates. And people want to smoke, especially people on their deathbeds, or people just in really poor health that don't have a whole long time left. They just want to smoke a joint. So there's no reason they shouldn't be allowed to. And basically now they're gonna sue to have it changed, because realistically there's no reason they should be able to ban it. Again, this goes back to bullshit laws that only hurt patients, which we talk about often on this show, unfortunately. So Nevada pot shops under close watch. Authorities pass all tests. So this happens pretty regularly whenever a new state happens. And this is from the cannabis. Basically, in Nevada, the state sent a whole bunch of undercover people that were underage, didn't have ID, had a fake ID, had a whatever. They tested 44 different dispensaries. Not a single one would sell to someone that didn't have a medical card or was under 21, or basically they tried hard to get them to bust them, and not a single place did that. Let me know when that happens in the alcohol industry, and yeah. Or for tobacco, if only we had such stand-up citizens in those. Oh wait, we don't. The next article is from fox13now.com. Nevada running out of weed, state of emergency declared. I thought this was one of the best headlines I had seen in a long time from a cannabis article. So basically, the governor declared a state of emergency for recreational marijuana regulators. So I don't know if you guys remember, a couple of weeks ago we talked about how the alcohol industry demanded that they be the distributors. Well, turns out the department must address the lack of immediately available distributors. The distributors have not been able to keep up with the supply chain, and dispensaries are running out of weed before the end of the day, before they can be transported new cannabis. So basically, the alcohol industry fought brutally hard, tooth and nail, like a crying fucking child, to force themselves to be involved in the cannabis industry for no reason at all. They had no place being there. And then they go ahead and they can't even do their job. So they need to be ejected out of the industry and told, look, you guys fucked up. You're done. You're gone. We're going to make our own regulatory group, our road transport group, or just allow the cannabis companies to do it and be licensed themselves. Create a transportation permit the same way they do in most other states, and have separate set up things, have the tracking on the vehicles, and then just do it that way. It's totally reasonable. So wait for them to drop the fucking ball and prove that they should have never had a chance to, should have never been involved in the first place, and they just proved it. So now the government is considering an emergency action that would overturn that bill and the original set of regulations, or not even regulations, the latest court judgment, so that they can actually continue to do it. There's dispensaries running out of weed. Many of them are going to run out before their next harvest, which is kind of hysterical. But they're just selling out because the international market's so high up there. So since the first, they've been blazing it up out there, apparently. All right. The next article is marijuana legalization debate keeps burning in Delaware. Brought to you by DelawareOnline.com. So just check chat, see if anybody's there. We got a bunch of stuff going on in chat. How's it going, guys? Shout out to Malik Spider. He helps out the show quite a bit. He does giveaways for seeds, and he also helps out once in a while, getting us guests on the show. He also helps out as regular at I think he's a moderator over on Growers Roundtable, and does a lot of work with the New Grow Show as far as helping them out. So big shout out to him. He's a huge supporter of the cannabis community. So thanks for watching, dude. Alrighty, we'll get back to the articles here. So Delaware is still considering trying to push through a legalization bill, where they're trying to get to one. They shelved the current recreational bill, but it doesn't mean it's totally impossible that it could be resurrected before the end of the year. They're trying to develop a tax and regulation structure that everyone can agree upon, which seems to be one of the bigger sticking points at the moment. It's not so much whether they should legalize it, just how it should be structured. So we'll see if they can make it happen. But they're trying. I think it's going to end up being something like Massachusetts, where there's this big tug of war in the beginning, or at the end. But at least that's the way it looks like at the moment. We'll see how it translates out. But at least it's promising. Seems to be that most people are in favor of it. Not to mention, Delaware doesn't have a sales tax, so they could definitely use the coffers, the money from the coffers. So that's why so many companies are based in Delaware. And not only that, they're based in Delaware, like a handful of the same addresses. The next article comes from tolldublade.com. Doctors still in limbo over Ohio medical marijuana rules. So, I don't know, John Kasich, I think, signed medical marijuana in earlier this year or into last year, something like that. But there's still a lot of confusion between local regulations and how the state regulations, and how it translates into the court system. So it's causing a lot of problems with some patients getting prosecuted in some counties, and other counties being the exact opposite. So it's a pretty good article, and it displays again some of the growing pains when you legalize, or don't legalize properly, which we harp on a lot. I know it gets annoying, and I know we get repetitive, but people get hurt. The next article comes from Nevada Dispensary, or I'm sorry, rgj.com, Reno Gazette. Nevada Dispensary is running out of weed. We were kind of talking about that earlier. Let's see if there was another point in this article I was trying to mention. Sorry, slightly behind schedule today. I'm buried in work, and I had very little time to prep for the show. But being buried in work is a good thing. Anyways, we'll skip this article. I apologize. So next article comes from fresnobee.com. Fresno needs the cannabis plan on a cannabis ban. Basically, Fresno's banned dispensaries. Or where was it? No. They banned them for a while, or for quite a while, and now it's a big movement to try and get them passed again. So.
Man, I'm sorry for the delay, guys. I had a food delivery from I'm blind and can't drive, and my delivery just came because he had to work late. So I'm apologize for leaving the show for a few minutes. But I got food.
Next article is from bothellreporter.com or bothelreporter.com. Yeah, bothell.com. So locals attend Senior Cannabis 101. So basically, there's a group out there hosted at the Senior Center that's putting on these educational cannabis classes that teach elderly people how to use a dab rig and how to roll a joint, what kind of glass pieces you should use, how to clean them, how to take care of them, basically just smoking 101, basically, which I thought was kind of funny. You don't really hear so much about senior groups putting these on, so that was cool to mention, and kind of a fun article.
I like that. It supports my thing. I keep telling y'all how many new seniors are joining the forum and doing their first grow at 60 years old. It's really cool as shit. For the first time ever, we got us. Used to be had a bunch of people our age, but they were all the moderators and the old growers. Now we got newbies that are 60 years old. Man. It's so cool. Like, it's so cool. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Sorry about that. I was finishing a thought while I was typing out back to somebody in chat here. So the next article is from Philly.com. Love Philly. Grew up in Philly. So PA's medical cannabis laws legalizes only the priciest treatments. As we talked about earlier, I think we mentioned on the show, maybe not this show, the other show. Basically, it's a no smoke law, so it's vaporizer cartridges, concentrates, or edibles or topicals for registered patients. So all three of these are concentrates, basically. So they're immediately going to be much more expensive than just flour or something like that. And that's basically what the point of the article is. And this still baffles the ever living shit out of me that why they only allow that stuff. 100 milli. So how about 100 tincture containing 100 milligrams of THC or CBD? That's $100 to $200. That's the going rate in Pennsylvania right now. Single pre-filled vape cartridges, $50 to $90. Okay, in California, you can get this for $20. These patients are being ripped off. It's bullshit. And again, who is being hurt? The children, the people having seizures, people having pain, people fighting cancer. This isn't hurting stoners. Not
at all. How good is that? How good is the quality on that pre-filled vape?
It says they're derived from rosin, so probably pretty good.
Oh, rosin! You said the magic word. Are we on a segue moment?
No.
Because I have something to say in about rosin that I wanted to bring up.
Oh, did you? Okay, go ahead. Bring up your thing about resin.
Yeah, just a quick
since I'm a huge
fan. I just want to know if you heard about it. We don't like to. I don't know if we do or don't, but I don't know. We always want to advertise corporate companies and all, but I won't say the name. But there's a big box store out there. Did you hear about this? That sells a rosin press.
I did, but I don't know if they're actively so how it works is sometimes shit gets listed on Walmart. What happened, I didn't even know about this till so I worked for a company. We found some of our products on Walmart.com, and I was like, what the hell? Like, we've never listed that, nor would we ever intentionally sell on there. So here it was just one of our resellers listed them because they have like a reseller platform.
Right.
So I'm curious to see if they directly listed themselves with their company and were able to, or if they were listed as a reseller and kind of slunk in as.
This news came from a employee of Walmart, and that's somebody that doesn't work in a store, but say like the warehouse kind of thing, you know. And I can't say anything beyond that because I don't want to get anybody in trouble. But yeah, you know, but the thing is I don't think it's offered everywhere either, and we're not sure if it's offered in the stores and that's what we wanted to ask you. Because see, this person doesn't live in a legal state, so it may not be there, but they may offer it in California or Colorado or somewhere, but it's come straight out. But then they have that Wayfair.com, which has to do with Walmart too, kind of, and they sell everything. Like I didn't know that till one day I went on there, and you can buy literally anything, whether it's in the store or not.
Yep.
Right.
So
It might be a third-party seller or something, but it's listed to be. You can buy it at $199.
So people understand why this is fucked up. A lot of people are using a cartridge every day, like one a day to one a week, at $50 to $90 a cartridge. Okay, that's insane. And here's the deal: that cartridge for 100 milligrams of tincture costs about $12.50 to make, and the cartridge itself costs about $7.50 with the pen and a little battery and everything. So
wow.
you know.
So how long does $12.50 worth of that last you? For these people out here that don't have the privilege to go into a pharmacy.
I can do that in a single dab, but I mean a normal person.
Yeah, well, okay.
A normal person probably a couple would probably last them a weekend of recreational, depending if you're occasional user. Weekend warrior we call them.
Yeah. Okay, so that $12.50 could add up after a while.
So here you go. A full pound of hash oil can be purchased at wholesale in California consignment markets for as low as $6,700 or $14 a gram. And that's like ultra low for like CO2, like not CO2, BHO, like crappy BHO. And so a pound sold in Pennsylvania or other East Coast states currently goes for up to $25,000, selling them at a gram at a time that same way.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And if you sold it for just in the cartridge form because it's diluted a little bit, you get about 60 grand. So that's why these people are being ripped off. This is why, and then like Marty was saying, like you end up with these refugees that have to live in certain states, or they die, or their kids die, and that should never fucking happen in the United States. There's no fucking excuse for that. Not in this country, none whatsoever.
And for those of you that want to be on the ignorant side out there, we're not talking about people from Syria. We're talking about American families that have to move from states with no medical marijuana laws, which of course now everybody has CBD oil. So that solved a lot of that, because that's what we're talking about. The families that had to move from a state to another state for, cancer too, but so they don't really cover that in this state. And on my state, they do it for CBD oil for seizures.
For cancer, though.
Cancer, and then so see, they've had to move to different states for stuff like that, and that's what Steve's talking about. We don't always clarify everything because we know what we're talking about, and you have to sit back and go, wait a minute, somebody out there might not know what the hell we're talking about. So we're not talking about Middle Eastern refugees. We're talking about good old American families that live in a state that doesn't have any legal medical marijuana laws, and they relocate to Colorado or California or somewhere by necessity, at risk of losing everything they had in their family home and everything. And like
a lot of them sold everything that they have. They sold just to be able to afford for their families to move.
Right. And then when they get to Colorado, it's a lot higher cost of living than it is over here on the southeast, where they're leaving. So it's a real burden on families, like we mentioned. Some are living in campers because that's all they can afford till they get established again out there. He's got to get a job too. The jobs, they don't just hand out jobs overnight anymore. It can take months to get a job, no matter how qualified.
Let's go to the job tree and collect the jobbies. Jobby land, where jobs grow on jobbies.
Yep.
And then from It's Always Sunny.
Oh yeah, Danny DeVito.
Show is so good. It's dabby time.
This is our mid part break here. So I guess that was a perfect way to segue. From, since you mentioned rosin, I just wanted to mention that. My buddy turned me on to that idea the other day, and I said that's pretty cool because it's hydraulic and all. So
I showed a old school BHO guy that the other day, and he goes, "Damn, if that was that easy to do it start from finish, I would have done that instead, and I'd still be doing it." It's kind of funny.
So we'll see what happens with all that.
So I just thought this was kind of crazy, and it brings up really good points about the insane, the insanity of some of the shit that these people are having to put up. And this is in a state that passed legal medical cannabis, and they're being ripped off like this. So a troy ounce of gold is $1,300 right now. Cannabis oil is above that.
That's just ridiculous for a medicine to.
So a pound. So a troy ounce for a pound of gold. Or I'm sorry, a pound of gold right now is selling for around $20,000. A pound of cannabis oil on the East Coast sells for $25,000. So it's literally better than gold.
I'd be interested to do a breakdown sometime of other pharmaceuticals in that respect, but it'd be a lot of figuring out. But to see how much they would be, if you could do a crossover on it.
And you're hitting like printer ink level of fucking richness right there.
Buy a $20 printer that works great, and you got to buy $50 little tiny 4 ounces of ink.
Yep.
Yeah. The jet copier conspiracy. Yeah.
Few things are more valuable on earth than printer ink, and if someone tells you otherwise, per ounce, and if someone tells you otherwise, they're a fucking idiot.
Oh, geez, yeah, that's a true thing that people don't realize.
It's ridiculous, but it's true.
It's funny. I've been through that, so that's why it's so funny to me.
I used to work in IT. I used to be an IT guy, so once upon a time.
Yeah. I found out buy the more expensive, and here's the funny thing. If you spend the money on the more expensive printer, you'll get a way better printer, and the ink's a lot cheaper, it seems like. The ones they sell you real cheap to get you now, oh, wow, I can't believe I got a printer for $39.99. And in a week, you're going back to buy $40 worth of ink.
So Salon.com has a really good article this week. Not that I'm a big fan of Salon, but about how many people are now using medical marijuana to treat alcoholism and alcohol addiction. They find that it helps reduce the cravings, and helps people come down, helps reduce with the withdrawal, and just in general makes it easier to deal with.
Well, we've known that for a while. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've quit drinking a few times in my life, and having cannabis really helped to let you mellow out, and you just have to get your head around doing it. And if you get none of this happens without you getting your head around it. You prepare yourself to quit drinking, even cannabis. If you want to quit drinking, cannabis is definitely a big, big help for doing that.
So the next article, and that was from, I said that. Okay. The next article is from PRI, or Public Radio International. For those of you who aren't aware, they're home, parent company of NPR. So is marijuana a secret weapon against the opioid epidemic? So basically, we talked about this before. New Mexico is trying to get funding for using cannabis. There's multiple groups in New Mexico using concentrates and other things to treat opioid addiction and helping people that are going through withdrawal. You do a couple of dabs, you go through some pretty severe withdrawal. I'll put you back. You go back to sleep. You might sleep for 3 or 4 days if I give you a couple of dabs, but your body's going to get you through that withdrawal period. You know what I mean? So, and I've had friends of mine get off of opioids that way. it really helps people. And now it's not gonna be a silver bullet. It's not like ibogaine, or not even that ibogaine is a total silver bullet, but ibogaine definitely has helped more people than I know than just about anything else, or iboga if you're not familiar with it.
No, you might want to throw a link. You got a link for that for people that now that you just threw something at me?
Oh, you guys can look up iboga or ibogaine online. It's really, really helpful for blocking opioid cravings for up to 2 years in many people. Doesn't help everyone, but it'll help most people. It is mildly hallucinogenic, and it will make you pretty violently ill. You're not violently ill, but you're going to puke quite a bit in the beginning. But it binds onto your opioid receptors and makes it so you can't get high, and it's good for someone that's trying to get off of it. It reduces the cravings and everything.
Wow.
So, on a side note, shout out to Doug Stanhope. Saw him today in my hotel. So he's doing stand up in my town tonight. So it was super cool. I also do stand up, so I was like super stoked to see him just wandering around and said hi to him. So that was cool. Random note.
I guess I should feel privileged when I get you to laugh then. Okay.
Right. I would never do my stand-up on here. I got to keep business and screwing around separate, because some of my jokes might.
Because we're totally
people.
On the show. We don't screw around at all.
Yeah, I'm definitely. Some of my stuff would definitely not be considered politically correct.
Is it politically motivated? Oh, I bet it is. Good question, isn't it?
Hey, you've heard some of my rants on here. My stand-up's more of like a Lewis Black style, just like.
Yeah, I love Lewis Black. Not to get sideways, but Lewis Black to me is one of the funniest motherfuckers on the planet. Yeah. So, I love them. Yeah.
Next article is Civilized Life. Civilized.life. Even the DEA admits the marijuana has never killed anyone. So the DEA released their where was it? The DEA released their annual report, and they listed drug deaths over the last since 1970 or whatever, and marijuana is still at 0. Just throwing that out there.
Once again, two articles in one show, same thing. Nobody dies from using cannabis.
So, Puerto Rico enacts medical marijuana law. Puerto Rico will take $50 million a month now that a law allowing the use of medical marijuana purposes is taken into effect. They're expecting about $50 million a month in taxes. Establish a legal framework for medical marijuana paves the way for people with cancer and other diseases to avoid prosecution for possessing pot and pot-derived items. The thing is, they pulled the similar shit to Florida, where they banned flower production and sale right now at the moment. So it's concentrates and edibles only, which is like whack. So yeah. Anyways, they keep screwing with the regulations in Puerto Rico, and it's making it brutally hard for some of the companies that I'm working with there to like stay current with everything, and then it's caused many complications when they were pretty close to being open. Huh?
No, go ahead. It's pretty close to. I'm sorry. I thought you.
Oh, they're getting pretty close to being open, but they keep changing all the regulations. So now they gotta change, and they gotta move some stuff around and re-engineer some shit, and it's just they can't do this after they issue permits. They need to be like, hey, we won't fuck with you for 5 years if you get, you know what I mean? Like, because people need time to get established, and especially when a project is trying to get established, your loss of revenue for a couple of months really screws shit up in the beginning.
That's just like Oregon. I mean, don't you think it's possible that the U.S. federal government has something to do with it, since Puerto Rico is an unofficial state or ward of the United States, whatever you wanted to say? Possibly
they want to be a state. They just voted that they wanted to be a state.
Right, and the poll, well, it's kind of been that way for decades. But what I'm getting at is they are a somewhat federally funded country, and So that I would think that the trials and tribulations they're going through, with it going back and forth, and it sounds like just like Oregon, kind of that it's because that there's a U.S. federal influence there in the government, and that the proponents of or the opponents to it are the proponents of the United States. I would think.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that concept?
I don't know. I mean, Puerto Rico definitely needs an influx of cash, and they would dramatically benefit from the influx of cash in Puerto Rico.
No, I was saying that the politicians that are fighting, that keep fucking it up or changing it back, they make headway, like you said, right? And then it gets taken away from them, and it's just back and forth, back and forth. It's probably, I guess I'll have to go conspiracy, as Marty would say, conspiracy theorizing that could possibly be from influence from the U.S. government. On the one side, the opponent side, not that it wouldn't be great. We know it'd be great. It'd be great for anywhere, any country, any state, any county, anybody. Who's causing all this dissension? That's what I was trying to get to the bottom of. Didn't know if you might have a clue about that.
I'm sorry, the last part kind of skipped. Can you repeat that? Just that last question.
What I was trying to get at as the root. Who is behind causing the dissent and the back and forth in Puerto Rico? And is it possibly influenced from the U.S. government?
No. It's just anytime you get a new place, especially in the Caribbean, they change it about 3,000 times before they figure out what the hell they want, and then they still don't know what they want.
And things go very slowly. Nobody's in a rush, right?
Oh yeah, everything goes in island time, which is cool when you're there, but when you're not, it's frustrating.
If you're waiting on something, it's that's what I thought. Okay, as soon as okay, I got you.
But yeah, they've definitely, and that was, what was the article from? Article from medicalexpress.com.
I see you're broadening your ranges on sources this week. That's pretty cool too.
No, I always do. So I have like 2 different search things, and then I have a couple people I follow that put out a lot of news articles, and I'll cherry pick a couple of good ones from them. And then there's a couple of Facebook groups that are dedicated to cannabis news. So between Google on cannabis and marijuana news, through Google, and then Facebook groups and a couple of people I follow, that's how I find what's important.
Okay.
Try to diversify as much as I can.
That's cool. And this next one is from biz.org. Bizig.
Actually, it's funny. Somebody said something about sessions. We actually didn't have sessions. Something about Sessions this week. He didn't actually do anything. I think he's now so terrified of being arrested for treason, especially after the stuff that came out today. I think that looks worse and worse by the hour.
Oh wow! It sounds like, is this a no shit session segue moment? I mean,
oh no, we don't have a nothing. I'm just saying the.
Well, you said something came out today, so it's got to.
That was totally political about Donald Trump's son.
Oh well, yeah, that would take hours to discuss Donald Trump's son. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
The next article comes from bizjournals.com. Marijuana-focused credit union to go back to Fed for master account. It's basically as a credit union that formed in Colorado. They're trying to be a cannabis-only credit union, and they're trying to basically get Federal Reserve backing, which they've repeatedly tried to do. I think this is the 3rd or 4th time that they've tried. I remember this. They tried to when I lived in Colorado. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. If that ever goes through, it'll be so much things will change overnight like that. And you're going to see banking and money's going to flow better, and prices will come down even more than they already are. But
right, because that'll set the precedent necessary for other places to take a stand.
Yeah. Not only that, it'll change how it works in the stock market. It'll change how things get funded. It'll change the liability to a lot of financial companies that are very avertant to cannabis at the moment because of those reasons.
one thing that we know for sure, if they're successful here, trust me, all those other banks all over the country are not going to want to give up on them billions of dollars that the cannabis industry is raising. So they'll all be pressuring the government to do the right thing so they can suck more billions out of us.
How you think Marty's gonna come back, or we have the company of his fine chair?
I see the shadow of Marty there for the last half hour, but
oh really?
Let's see. Yeah, you've been busy reading. I've been
like
Peter
Pan.
His chair's been listening the whole time.
Very attentive chair.
Yes, look at it. That's very, paying attention, concentrating.
Can you tell it's 7:10?
Focused.
The next article comes from WFTV.com. I love that. I wish I had a town called Oh, this is in Florida. So literally it's ABC and the acronym for the channel. WTF. WFTV. Oh, I guess it is not WTF.
WFT.
If you're half dyslexic like I am, it's just as good.
What fucking TV? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Orlando City Council to discuss banning new medical marijuana facilities. See, now this goes back to Orlando. Orlando needs money for their schools, their county parks, all kinds of things. And what is the first thing they want to do? Ban it, so they can cut themselves off from funding. They could institute a 1% or 2% local tax on top of the state tax and fund anything they want, and it's totally reasonably.
Yeah, I just wonder if that has a lot to do with Disney World or Disney World and United Studios down Universal.
If you work at Disney World, you got to put up with that many screaming children. You want those people to be stoned. Well, yeah, but you don't want one of those people snapping one day.
But those super rich conglomerate entertainment companies have millions of children and families that go there, and they got a pulse on that community for a shitload of jobs and taxes and all. And I just wonder, just makes me wonder, Steve, when you say something like that in Orlando, you got to think, again, it's because they're going back to that. We got to protect the children and the families from the evil demon weed community.
On that note, here's the last article on Rant of the Week. Cannabis from .co. This is a really good article. I thought it was an op-ed, and this is by someone that we don't normally like. We called this guy out an episode or two ago. This guy, CW Hemp CEO Joe Stanley, the Stanley brothers, the fucking Charlotte's Web assholes that rip people off day in and day out. All right. So you guys have heard me rant about him. So he had a very good op-ed.
They're the guys that did the reality show, right? About themselves, starting out.
Yeah, but the op-ed was really good about how he's terrifying all these sick people and forcing a lot of them into the underground market where they're getting pesticide laden stuff. And he makes a lot of good points that are accurate. Now, I don't agree with everything, and I think his particular stuff is garbage, but and we talked about why. 9 milligrams in a single dose. What the hell? You're gonna charge people $40, $60? Get out of here. That's snake oil.
Oh, so this is Stanley Brothers again that you were talking about. You didn't bring that up earlier. That it's tied to the Stanley Brothers.
CW Hemp is Charlotte's Web.
Okay, gotcha. Oh, CW. Okay, gotcha.
CW Pharma is the UK company that's not. I don't think they're the same. I guess they could be. They're based in the UK. I'd have to look into that. I don't actually know the answer to that question.
Well, they wanted to take over the world. They want
to totally destroy the cannabis industry and make it Charlotte's Web only. They've repeatedly tried to do that in multiple states. But he had a pretty good op-ed about how there's 1,500 people that have been that are arrested or something, or affected. No, not arrested. I'm sorry, affected. That are potentially facing felony charges because of the new changes in CBD juuling. Sorry, brain fart there at the end. So, anyways, if you're interested in a good article, you guys know I hate the guy, but I thought his op-ed was extremely well written. So definitely go check it out.
I think, doesn't it kind of go back to, it's not that they really were evil monsters to begin with. They've just evolved into trying to monopolize the industry. And
well, yeah,
I mean, they had the right idea, and they just had enough money to keep trying to get bigger. And that basically. Well,
no, then they tried to treat it like a fucking Silicon Valley, like venture capitalist thing, and that's where it all went south. That's where it got wrong.
Okay. Who do we have in chat? We got anything else in chat going on there, Steve?
I'm looking. Chicken Hole's joining us. We had local Weed Eclectic, Malik Spider, Chicken Hole.
Well, he's always around, he's our buddy.
Root 6.4. Shout out. Mr. Slowski.
Cool.
Derek. There was some seed dude that wanted to shout out. Hey, Coyote Grows.
Oh, wow. Hey, Coyote. Long time.
I'm just scrolling up here. There was some seed dude. I don't know what happened. That was just local. Local asked if I could shout out. I'll do a little shout out at the end. Check out his channel, Loki, LOKEI 360 Grow OP. So
you get that?
Just ask me to do a shout out. I'll do a shout out for our supporters. Gotta support the supporters. So
thank y'all for being here. I'm glad you're here. I think this is going to evolve into a really badass show.
Look who's back.
It's alive. There's AP Med's back in the house.
Shh. He's fapping. He doesn't know that the window's open.
I've been here. I've been here.
Yeah, we've been talking to your chair the whole time.
I came back, you guys sounded like you were talking about the same stuff. So I was like, all right, cool.
We got very dabbed out. We were talking about something.
Whatever that last article was.
I was ranting about and then complimenting the Stanley brothers because they wrote a good op-ed, but I don't like them at all.
Yeah,
and they're toxic for the industry.
Well, even people who are toxic for the industry, at least a lot of times, are better than people that are anti-industry.
Oh, yeah. Well, they are anti-industry because they only want their strain to be allowed, so they're just as bad.
But that's not going to never happen.
So. Oh, you need to go read some state legislation, brother. They've already passed it. Look at Alabama. Alabama allows just only growing of that. There's a bunch of states that do, especially in the South. Mississippi allows it.
I still can't believe Mississippi allows anything. That's real. Well, they're so poor. They finally had to say, you know what? We just give up. We're going to legalize that shit and ride the coattails of all that money.
No, they just need the medicine there, man. It's not like that.
But the government wants to do it because in the end they
actually, technically, if you want to get technical, the longest running cannabis program in States has been, or at least continuous one that's documented, is the one down in Mississippi at that. What's the name of it? The college there. They still send the patients from the 70s. Was it like 11 of them left, or 8 of them left, or 3 of them left, or something? They get their can full of joints.
Right. Oh, yeah. You're talking about the old medical marijuana experiment that was grandfathered in. Once they were in, they got to keep getting supplied.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, you don't think about that. I remember that. I read that about
But
15
stuff is like they've done. I've seen there's actually like published medical tests on it because the one guy was like, "Yeah, dude, like let's find out what this is like," and it was just bad. There's like leaf material in it too, and they just have no like they didn't even like harvest and trim the buds. It's just like, hey, take the plant, grind it up, dry it out.
Right, right.
Same thing we do with tobacco because we don't know what the fuck we're doing.
Interesting, though, that you bring that up. I remember that. You're right about that. I'm just
And then
saying, though, still, they didn't legalize marijuana. They had that thing way back when. And
well,
now,
no, no, no.
about the taxes.
And then they have a. I guess there's some professor there. There is a guy there that kind of that knows what he's doing. And he's been on the Hash Church, I think, a couple of times.
Is it Mississippi State? Old
Hmm?
Miss? Well, you said where?
There's
You
a couple people.
said you didn't know the name of it.
I forget what the name of the guy
Well, they
was.
got Mississippi State and University of Mississippi.
Yeah.
Old
Mississippi.
Miss.
Yeah, somewhere in Mississippi is where they have that program. But that guy's has a bunch of published research on it, but a lot of it's, you know, the quality of the material they had to work with didn't help out their studies.
Right, right. That's the same as a lot of early cannabis studies because they didn't even really know about inducing flower and all at the beginning. They just put it under lights and saw what it did. And then 2 years later, they harvested something. I don't know. Some early cannabis books I read, the guy just, it took 2 years to harvest.
Anyways, I will. I think we should wrap up the show. Roger, you want to tell people how to find you?
Well, I'm always trying to help people learn how to grow and providing you with guidance on anything that you need for growing medical marijuana. And I'm at ilovegrowingmarijuana.com. And I got a great staff of people there that are, and a bunch of friendly people in the forum, and several of the panelists here at the Last Week in Cannabis and on the Growing with Fishes podcast that we do on Thursday. They come over to the forum and help out a little bit here and there when they got some free time. And it's all a great place to learn. There's a lot of great blog articles so you can pretty much read about everything you could ever think of about cannabis over there. And we're building a new aquaponics section, and we're going to try to stock that with all the pertinent information and make sure that you've got that there too.
Cool. Marty, how they find you? Oh, remember, all complaints on the show, if you're offended by anything or at any point, apmeds@gmail.com.
That's right. So yeah, you guys can find me at AP Meds on YouTube, AP Meds on Patreon. If you are on Facebook, Aquaponic Cannabis Growers Group is a group that Steve and I started about the same time we started the podcast, wasn't it? Maybe a little sooner, a couple of years, maybe something like that. Year and a half.
Yeah, I think it's coming up on a year and a half now, 2 years, something like that.
Anyway, we have a couple thousand people in there, and
yeah, we're like a couple people away from 2,000 people.
Yeah, and so we have a lot of good conversations in there. So if you guys enjoy Facebook groups, you can always hit us up there, and we have a lot of good discussion and pictures, updates. People post stuff about their own grows. So if you want to get some information from more than just a few of us, then you can check out on there. We like to get you guys working with each other as much as you work with us. And I think that's probably about all the places to find me. If you guys have any questions, you can always hit me up on the channel, on the Facebook Growers group, on Facebook in general. Yeah, that's about it.
Cool. And I can do this one. I am teaching a aquaponic cannabis class in person in Ouroboros the 22nd and 23rd of July. And then we're hopefully going to be doing a joint class with Marty in August, assuming his schedule is open, which I got to go over the dates with him yet. I got the dates coming up, but we're going to be doing a have our live and online class. It'll be great because by then I'll have some more plants and we'll actually have some big. Oh man, I can't tell you yet. There'll be some plants to show you here nearby, and yes, I'll leave it at that. If all goes well.
Sounds good.
Are y'all gonna video
And,
that?
Yeah. There'll be more things later about that.
Right.
So, trying to think what else there is. I think that's everything else. Just check out my YouTube, Potemponics. If you're listening to the audio cast, if anyone's listening to the, I put all the little synopsises and the links in the YouTube comments. Sorry, I'm really stoned. I was doing lots of dabs because it's oil day.
You know,
And,
you didn't do the weird. You didn't do the weird story of the week.
well, there wasn't any really good ones.
Okay.
I think the
Did we do Joe?
the weirdest one was that Stanley Brothers article. I thought, huh?
Okay. Oh, I got you. All right, I missed that. Okay. My fault.
No, you're fine.
Shut up.
There just wasn't any
Shut.
good, like, funny or ridiculous ones in the past. Some weeks we have some really good winners, and then other weeks there's just nobody did anything particularly stupid that was weed related that week, which is always a good week too, you know.
Yeah. Okay. Thought I missed that. I thought we had the last one you did, so my fault. Just want to make sure because it's always funny. We always have a blast with that last article. Usually, but we had some fun with Stanley tonight. We even gave him some props.
Oh yeah, I gave him props, but again, we've brought up on other episodes why it is that we disagree with them and the way that they treat the rest of the cannabis market. So
yeah,
whatever. All right, we're gonna go. I think we're all fucking too stoned to sit on our computers much longer. Plus, I have more work to do. I need to go eat some food and have some dinner and get back to work. So I'm gonna go walk across the street and get a pizza.
All right, guys.
I'll see you guys next week. Thursday. I'm not sure who the guest is yet. I got a couple of cool people in the queue, and we just gotta see who's available this week. So stay tuned.
All right, have a good one, guys.